Yo, welcome to Simply Bitcoin Live, your number one source for the peaceful Bitcoin revolution. Rumors have been circulating that a major US bank has been secretly offering Bitcoin to their private clients while their CEO has been publicly denouncing Bitcoin. Like always, what we say on this show, let's pay attention to what they're doing and not what they're saying. Are these rumors true? We'll find out. Well, what if I told you that three massive household name banks in the US that control over $8.6 trillion assets under management have already been quietly buying Bitcoin and selling Bitcoin exposure to their clients? Today, we're going to be exposing why the major US banks are already in Bitcoin. We're going to address these rumors that have been blowing up on Twitter and why this upcoming Bitcoin bull run that's expected in 2025 could be wildly different than the last cycles. But before we get into the discussion, I want to bring my co-host on stage. Of course, I'm talking about the legendary Optimus Fields. And what is it that I'm talking about? Well, the Twitter has been going absolutely crazy. There was this there was this breaking news by Bitcoin LFG saying big breaking. Big breaking. Major US bank goes big on Bitcoin. JPMorgan announced plans to offer an actively managed Bitcoin fund to its private wealth clients. The problem is that once you look into this stuff, there is no source confirming this. There's absolutely no source confirming that JPMorgan has been offering this to their private clients. However, I also did a little bit of digging. JPMorgan has been buying exposure to Bitcoin, however. Check out this article from Investopedia. JPMorgan disclosed investment holdings totaling $731,000 in BlackRock's Bitcoin ETF, Fidelity's ETF, and Grayscale's ETF, as well as Wells Fargo. Wells Fargo has started to allow their brokers to sell the Bitcoin ETF to their clients, as well as Morgan Stanley. And also, Goldman Sachs and Morgan Stanley took stakes in US spot Bitcoin ETFs in Q2. So if you combine the total assets under management of those four banks, it wasn't three banks, it was four banks, that's $8.6 trillion under management. Let's read some of the Reuters article. Goldman Sachs and Morgan Stanley purchased a total of more than $600 million in Bitcoin ETFs during the second quarter, regulatory filings showed on Wednesday. The two banks joined a group of hedge funds and financial advisors that have waded into the products, which began trading in January 2024. Goldman Sachs said in its quarterly disclosure to the SEC, known as a 13F filing, that it had acquired about $418 million in several of the recently launched ETFs tied to the price of spot Bitcoin. So major US banks, wealth management banks are now exposed to Bitcoin. So even if this rumor turns out to be total BS from Bitcoin LFG, because I couldn't find any sources backing it up, it is true that Wells Fargo, JP Morgan, Morgan Stanley, and Goldman Sachs are all have exposure to Bitcoin, and some of those banks are even selling it to their clients as well, the ETF products. What's quite interesting to me, though, Opti, is this JP Morgan aspect. Why is it quite interesting to me? Well, JP Morgan's CEO is Jamie Dimon, and Jamie Dimon has said some interesting things about Bitcoin in the past. Let's check it out.
If you mean crypto like Bitcoin, I've always said it's a fraud.
No hope for it.
Well, if they think they're a currency, there's no hope for it. It's a Ponzi scheme. It's a public, decentralized Ponzi.
I'm going to read it again. JP Morgan disclosed investments totaling $731,000 in the BlackRock ETF, Bitwise ETF, and Fidelity's ETF, and Grayscale's Bitcoin Trust, with the majority in the BlackRock. So, I mean, did Jamie Dimon just admit to investing in a Ponzi? So it goes back to what I was saying in the beginning, ladies and gentlemen. Don't pay attention to what they say. Pay attention to what they are doing. And the fact is that major household named banks in the United States and wealth management banks are all acquiring massive amounts of Bitcoin, and they're also selling it to their clients as well, despite what Jamie Dimon wants you to believe, that Bitcoin is a Ponzi scheme. I mean, eventually everyone bends the knee. Saylor initially was skeptical about Bitcoin. Larry Fink 5 years ago was saying that Bitcoin was an index of money laundering. You know, now he's saying that Bitcoin is a non-sovereign alternative to fiat currencies, right? So eventually everyone bends the knee to the king. And of course, that is because of Bitcoin's superior monetary incentives. Opti, what are your thoughts on this, man? I mean, like the projection, the hypocrisy, the hubris, the ego. I think it was Max Kaiser that originally said that Bitcoin is an ego test. It's a humility test, you know? So like people like Peter Schiff, people like Jamie Dimon that feel like, you know, they control the financial world, and then all of a sudden Bitcoin comes in. And, you know, they're like, I'm new to Bitcoin, I'm here to fix it, but they can't really fix it. They have to get in line like everybody else and pay the price that they deserve. You know, I feel like that could be quite humbling to people that have reached those heights of wealth and power. Opti, what are your thoughts?
Well, I think everyone knows my thoughts usually. If you hang around here long enough, you know what I think about central bankers or bankers like Jamie Dimon and the, however you want to call them, powerful financial elites out there. They're obviously incentivized to FUD Bitcoin. I'm convinced that Jamie Dimon is a Bitcoin holder. Jamie Dimon isn't as dumb as everyone likes to paint him out in the Opti, Bitcoin Twitter.
They are. It's been.
No, I know. I'm talking about him personally. I think Jamie Dimon has been buying Bitcoin personally for a long time. He understands what's going on. He's a smart guy. He obviously knows the game being played, and he holds Bitcoin. And not only that, JPMorgan is an authorized participant to the BlackRock ETF. So like they can say whatever they want publicly, but they are incentivized to make sure that Bitcoin does well. And we talk about this constantly. The central bankers like Jamie Dimon, and of course, people in politics like Elizabeth Warren, etc., they are incentivized to tell you not to buy Bitcoin because they know the game like we know the game. It is all a fiat scam. The real Ponzi scheme here is the fiat dollar. So they can't come out here and be like, yeah, don't buy Bitcoin or buy Bitcoin because it's going to be the pin on the fiat Ponzi scheme. So they know what game is being played. And I call it the billionaire FUD playbook. It's very simple. They publicly shame Bitcoin. They publicly FUD Bitcoin. They stack their bags privately. And then once they have a good position, they come out and be like, look, I love Bitcoin. Bitcoin is great. You know, Larry Fink did the same thing. He's probably the biggest example of this. FUD Bitcoin forever. Finally, secretly roll out the BlackRock ETF, get the approval of the regulators and the politicians and stuff, and then be like, I love Bitcoin. And now he's out here shilling Bitcoin with all of his institutional asset managers, just shilling it, writing bullish Bitcoin reports. It's not very I'm blanking on the word right now, but it's very obvious to anyone that understands the game right now what is going on. They're not incentivized to pump Bitcoin because that would expose the scam of fiat money. But now that they have these Bitcoin products, they're more than incentivized to start pumping them. And remember the clip we played yesterday of Gary Gensler? Everyone was kind of, doing the fire Gary Gensler stuff. And I find it very interesting that the main takeaway from that clip yesterday was that Gary Gensler's like, look, we have these ETF products, guys. Just like buy Bitcoin through our regulated products and don't take it into self-custody. So they're incentivized to push you through these regulated mechanisms of buying Bitcoin so that they can try to control the on and off ramps. It's a very obvious playbook once you understand what's going on. And this is why we constantly say the real move here, the real revolution is taking custody of your Bitcoin. No longer do we need to go to these middlemen. No longer do we even need to care what the suits think. You just need to save in Bitcoin, get Bitcoin however you can, and hold it in your own custody. This is how you win. And so, there's so many examples showing that JPMorgan is buying Bitcoin. They have a lot of Bitcoin products. And personally, I think Jamie Dimon holds a lot of Bitcoin. He's a smart dude, and he's been learning and reading about Bitcoin for a long time, but publicly he can't say that. And so he's incentivized to publicly continue to be like, don't talk to me about Bitcoin, bro. I don't care. Remember, what was it? Was it the World Economic Forum? No, at Davos this year. He's like, this is the last time I'm talking about Bitcoin. And then like a month later, he's like, crypto's a scam. And it's just like, all right, bro, like keep talking.
I just find it hilarious because it's like, you know, one thing he's saying like this is a Ponzi scheme, but his own bank is, you know, has exposure to Bitcoin. Like, I find that hilarious, you know, and now you have the wealth management banks coming in like Goldman buying $400 million of exposure to the ETFs, even though, you know, they're not necessarily offering that to their clients yet. So it's hilarious. And it goes back to what we've been saying about politicians and about bankers. Like, don't pay attention to what the bankers are doing. Don't pay attention to what the bankers are saying. Pay attention to what the bankers are doing. And Bitcoin has this like really interesting mechanism of kind of exposing incentives. And it gave me some original thought this morning. And in regards to how governments and banks view Bitcoin. So Bitcoin is treated as money when it suits regulatory needs, but it's dismissed as money when it clashes with political objectives. And we're seeing that time and time again as it relates to central bankers, as it relates to bankers in general, as it relates to governments, right? It's like, it's crazy because they want to benefit from number go up, but they don't want the freedom go up. They don't want the people to benefit from it before they benefit themselves, right? So it's crazy how Bitcoin does these things. Anyways, guys, we have exactly. We were saying, trust us, bro. Anyways, guys, it's going to be a hell of a show. We have a lot to unpack today. Breaking news, there was a major lawsuit uncovered yesterday in regards to a major Bitcoin company. Swan Bitcoin sues ex-staff members over, I'll get into the details. It's quite interesting. Ross Stevens from NYDIG makes the case. He released an entire report called Bitcoin's Protected under the First Amendment, which is something that we wholeheartedly believe here at Simply Bitcoin, because I think that money is a form of speech. And also, I don't know if we'll have time to cover this today. Hopefully we will. Tornado Cash developer Roman Storm's criminal case will proceed to trial. They tried to get this case dismissed, and it's setting a very dangerous precedent because at the end of the day, this developer, all he did was write code, and a percentage of the people that used his software used it for illicit purposes. But why don't bankers go to jail when, criminals use the banking system to launder money? Why is it that only Bitcoin privacy developers or Bitcoin developers or crypto developers, why are they the ones that get the brunt of it, right? It's kind of like rules for thee and not for me. Kind of reminds me of this whole Jamie Dimon thing where he's calling Bitcoin a Ponzi. Meanwhile, his bank is buying Bitcoin. Anyways, guys, it's going to be a hell of a show. Stay tuned in. Before we start the show, I want to give a shout out to our lead sponsor. Of course, I'm talking about Bitcoin Well. Bitcoin Well is the best place to build your automatic self-custody Bitcoin stack. Buy real Bitcoin. Enable your independence with the fastest and safest way to buy Bitcoin in Canada and the USA. To get started, all you got to do is you put in your email address. Takes about 2 to 5 minutes to get verified. And Bitcoin Well is automatic self-custody. What does that mean? That means that when you buy Bitcoin on Bitcoin Well, as soon as the funds clear, it goes straight to your self-custody Bitcoin wallet address. It does not allow you to leave your Bitcoin on the exchange, which perfectly aligns with the Simply Bitcoin ethos of the separation of money and state. They also have the Bitcoin Wishing Well contest, which you could enter by buying Bitcoin on Bitcoin Well, which leads you to earn Bitcoin Well points, which you could use those points towards the Bitcoin Wishing Well contest. So we're going to do one for you guys right now. Get your Lightning wallets ready. First person to scan the QR code wins $500. Satoshis. If you use promo code Simply BTC, again, Simply BTC, to sign up to bitcoinwell.com today, you get 3 tosses into the Bitcoin wishing well absolutely free. All right, everybody, let's get to the numbers. Lots to talk about. All right, everybody, I do want to give a shout out to our sponsor, Stampseed. Usually, when you buy yourself a hardware wallet, it comes with a piece of paper, and you're meant to write down your seed words on that piece of paper. The problem is that paper is prone to water damage, fire damage. Your dog could potentially eat it. You definitely don't want to store your generational wealth on paper, which is why we recommend here at Simply Bitcoin to literally stamp your seed using proof of work in the privacy of your home. Stamp your seed letter by letter into a plate of titanium, and the Stampseed Titanium Seed Phrase Storage Kit will enable you to do just that. It comes with the hammer, it comes with the letter stamping tools, it comes with the anvil, it comes with everything you need so you can, again, stamp your seed into a plate of titanium so that it can survive the test of time. It's also fireproof, it's waterproof. Your dog's probably not going to want to eat a plate of titanium. Simply Bitcoin recommends you storing your generational wealth properly by properly securing your seed phrase, which is why we recommend the Stampseed. Stamp your seed into titanium. Don't write it down on a piece of paper. Use promo code SIMPLY to get 15% off anything on the store. At the time of recording, we've had quite a little bit of a pump. The price of Bitcoin is $66,270. Sats per dollar, 1,509. Block height, 863,094. Realized monetary inflation, 1.34%. Market capitalization, 1.31 trillion. Bitcoin versus gold market cap, 7.09%. Money supply, 19,759,452 BTC. Percentage issued, 94.09%. In the grand scheme of things, we are just getting started. Anyways, I do want to talk about this historic report released by NYDIG and Ross Stevens. The name of the report is Bitcoin's Protection Under the First Amendment. I think the reason that this report is being written is there is going to be an inevitable clash between nation states wanting to retain their ability to create money for free, their monopoly on the issuance and the control of money, and Bitcoin. And I think people are there's going to be a very difficult discussion that's going to be had because governments get a tremendous amount of funding from their ability to print money. But all of a sudden, if their citizens have the ability to use BlackRock's own words, not mine, choose an alternative non-sovereign monetary system, what are governments going to do to fund themselves? The long-term effects of this is that it removes a major source of revenue for them. This is a part that they don't want to admit. Most people in society don't know what money is. Most people in society believe that taxes fund the government. Most people in society don't understand, and I'm going to focus on the US government specifically because that's the one I'm the most knowledgeable about. US government spent $1.7 trillion more than it collected in tax revenue last year. How did it do that? It did that because it was able to print the difference. So when you hear politicians saying stuff like tax the rich, increase taxes, the government doesn't have a tax collecting problem. The government has a spending problem, and it will continue to have a spending problem as long as they have the ability to print money. And that is exactly what Bitcoin is all about. It's a peaceful and silent protest against the government's ability to do that. But there is going to be a clash because the government isn't going to want to let go of that privilege, let go of that power, let go of that privilege that they have abused, I might add. So anyways, I think that this is where, these types of reports are so important. So Ross Stevens of NYDIG is making the case that Bitcoin is protected under the First Amendment. Obviously, I don't have the time to read you the entire report, so I'm going to focus on the introduction solely, and then I'll put this in the chat so you guys could read the rest, or Opti will. Here we go. Boom. But anyways, it goes on to say, Bitcoin, a decentralized, free and open source digital ledger, has been used by millions of people around the world since its invention more than a decade ago. Launched by the pseudonymous Satoshi Nakamoto, Bitcoin empowers anyone with an internet connection to transfer value and other information without the need for a centralized intermediary. This paper argues through extensive legal precedent that Bitcoin is speech and therefore protected by the First Amendment. Any regulations attempting to curtail Bitcoin therefore have clear constitutional implications. Reliant entirely on constant communication among its participants to operate efficiently, Bitcoin is speech harnessed to transfer value, among other purposes. Bitcoin users broadcast transactions to all members of the network. Other Bitcoin participants, known as miners, compile and propagate those transactions, help reach consensus about Bitcoin's ledger, and add their own expressive content. Bitcoin participants also actively debate and signal support for changes to the open source protocol. It goes on to say, this is something that I have emphasized many times on Simply Bitcoin. Bitcoin is also a political movement. Launched amidst the Great Recession, Bitcoin was designed to free individuals from the government monopoly over money. Indeed, the very first message recorded on Bitcoin contained a commentary on the failings of government, administrative, political, and financial systems. Quote, "The Times, Chancellor on the brink of the second bailout for bank." That was a message in the Genesis block. Many Bitcoin devotees, including the author of this paper, regarded their continued use of Bitcoin as an endorsement of its founding ideological principles. To further those principles, Bitcoin adherents collectively maintain and enhance the Bitcoin protocol, plan conferences, and engage in political advocacy. In recent years, Bitcoin is growing resistance from the very governmental authorities that the Bitcoin that advocates seek to deprive of their monetary monopolies. Some governments, including China and Venezuela, have banned Bitcoin or Bitcoin mining. In the United States, federal financial regulators have sought to stymie Bitcoin in a variety of ways, while various state and local governments have focused on restricting Bitcoin mining. In 2022, for example, New York enacted a 2-year moratorium on a new or expanding Bitcoin mining facilities to certain carbon-based energy. In taking such steps, regulators do not appear to have considered the First Amendment implications of targeting Bitcoin. They should. Bitcoin is a platform for communicating value and other information, including vast amounts of highly expressive content. Engaging with Bitcoin therefore involves speech protected by the First Amendment. For many, moreover, using and mining Bitcoin also constitutes protected expressive conduct because those activities are intended and widely understood to be a protest against government control and debasement of fiat currencies. Participating in the Bitcoin network is also expressive associational activity, which likewise triggers First Amendment interest. So an incredible introduction. And I love how he put the Benjamin Franklin quote on the top. The security of property and the freedom of speech always go together. And in those countries where a man cannot call his tongue his own, he can scarce call anything else his own. Incredible. I highly recommend checking out the entire report. But some quick thoughts here in regards to this report. Like, yes, Bitcoin is speech. Yes, Bitcoin is a political movement. We've been making the case for that for a long time now. Bitcoin is a it's a peaceful revolution. You are protesting. And there's something that people have to wake up and understand. We did not sign up to be forced to use a money that steals from us. That is not part of the social contract. That is something that politicians are taking advantage of people that are not informed on that matter. You can make the case that taxes have been agreed upon on the social contract level. People have agreed on it. People might not like it. People, you can complain about the income tax, but the 16th Amendment was passed in 1913, coincidentally the same year that the Federal Reserve was established, and people agreed that there was going to be an income tax. Now, politicians promised it was only going to be 1% to 3%, and then they increased it progressively over the years because that's what they do. But it's enshrined in law. People have not agreed upon the fact that money has to steal from you in order to function. And because of that, that is a weak point. That is a point that they have no explanation for. They can't justify it. They can't explain it away. So when you hear people asking Kamala Harris or Donald Trump, what are you going to do about groceries? What are you going to do about the cost of living? That's like asking the people that took you hostage when they're going to free you. Because it is government and government debasing the currency, not, the conflict in Ukraine, not the pandemic. It is literally government debasing the currency that is the sole cause of inflation. It's not price gouging. It's not any of this. It's government debasing the currency. So Bitcoin is the ability to opt out of that entirely. And every single day that Bitcoin survives, it proves to the world that a currency can exist without inflation. And this is why Elizabeth Warren and other members that are not fans of Bitcoin are so staunchly against Bitcoin, because it's an idea. It's an idea whose time has come. It's an idea whose very first block is addressing the problem itself. And it's an idea that is better money. It's a better system than government money. So it becomes kind of like a pain in the ass for them in multiple different ways. And because it's decentralized in nature, they can't shut it down. And because they can't shut it down, they're forced to compete with it. And when you have a competition between a currency that is inflationary and prone to censorship versus a currency that is deflationary and censorship resistant, that's only always going to end in one way. That revolving door, that door only goes in one direction. I have never met someone in my entire life, I've been in this industry for 8 years, that has told me, Nico, I've gone to a Bitcoin standard, I like it, but I'm going back to fiat. It's always a one directional door. So for us, Bitcoiners, Bitcoin content creators, Bitcoin revolutionaries, and you are a revolutionary whether you realize it or not, because the revolution, all it requires is for you to buy Bitcoin, earn Bitcoin, mine Bitcoin, and take that Bitcoin into self-custody. And you're revolting against the system just by doing that. You're saying, no, I don't want to partake in inflationary money. So they're going to try to gaslight. They're going to try to misrepresent. They're going to try to use very scary words like terrorism, money laundering, financial stability, all of these things, everything that they can think of to justify their ability to keep their monopoly on the creation and the control of money. And I think this piece by Ross Stevens is preluding that. It's getting in front of it. And it's basically saying, you know what? Nah, Bitcoin is speech. Money is speech. Bitcoin is protected by the First Amendment. He's trying to set the bar. He's going on offense instead of us always being on defense, right? So excellent case. I completely agree. And Opti, I mean, what's our motto, right? Simply Bitcoin, tomorrow's Bitcoin news today. How long have we been saying that Bitcoin is inherently a political movement?
For too long, and we got way too much flack for it too. But yeah, going back to the whole like Bitcoin is speech. It took me a little while to fully wrap my head around this because it's very obviously speech once you understand it. The crypto wars of the 90s very clearly shown, and even at the highest levels proved that software is speech and it's protected under the First Amendment. And very clearly, guys, Bitcoin is just software. Like, it's just code. It's ones and zeros. So in the 90s, it's been what? For as long as I've been alive, it has been proven that software is speech and that they can't clamp down on software because of the First Amendment. Obviously, the people in power will do whatever they can to try to circumvent that. But Bitcoin is very simply speech. It is code. Money is speech. We say it all the time. Nico, what do you always say? If you can't speak freely, what makes you think that they're going to let you try to transact freely? It's been proven constantly that Bitcoin is speech. It should be protected under the First Amendment. And this is why you see a lot of regulators and a lot of, politicians try to frame Bitcoin as something other than it is. And this is why even sometimes talking about Bitcoin as money is very dangerous. If we do get into that tornado cash news, it really if you categorize it as money, then they can try to put it in a box and try to, smack a lot of these regulations and money laundering rules on top of Bitcoin. And of course, they're going to try to kneecap Bitcoin as much as possible. But Bitcoin is speech. It's software. It's literally ones and zeros. You run it on your computer. It's very clearly protected under the First Amendment. And we're not the only ones that have been saying this. Beautyon's been on that beat for a long time. A lot of other Bitcoiners have been saying this for a long time. But Bitcoin is very obviously also a political movement as well when you understand how politics works, that basically all of politics is downstream from the money printer. This is why it's so important to get involved and do what we can as Bitcoiners, not just to advocate for Bitcoin and number go up, but to advocate for everyone in whatever possibility and capability we have to get involved. Because again, look, we have the best money in the world. And yes, we're going to accrue a lot of financial power and a lot of wealth with number go up, but that doesn't really mean much if we don't also try to grasp at the real power structures with it, which is the political power. This is why organization is super powerful. This is why I think the next movement that we'll see from Bitcoiners is, and actually we're seeing it right now, is getting politically involved. I know Bitcoiners turn away.
Say that again, Opti. Say it again.
I don't even know what I say. The most important thing for us Bitcoiners to do is to get politically involved. And this is coming from someone that has been apolitical.
This is the most powerful political movement the world has ever seen since the introduction of Marxism in the mid-19th century. I want you guys to comprehend what the implications of the separation of money and state are going to do for society as a whole. Think about it. Separation of money and state, by definition, that is political. So eventually, Bitcoin was going to come out of the shadows and it was going to be involved in the mainstream discourse. This is why you're seeing so much pushback. This is why we cover the Tornado Cash case. This is why we cover the Samurai case. This is why we talk about Trump. This is why we talk about Kamala. This is where we are in Bitcoin's history. And this is what you guys have to understand. Now, the awesome part about all of this is that unlike the separation of church and state, which was not very peaceful, take a look at the French Revolution, the Red Terror. It was horrific. A lot of bad things happened. I'll just say that, right? This is information narrative trench warfare on the battlegrounds of the internet. So tweets count. Memes count, videos count. This is about winning over the hearts and minds of individuals and asking them to opt out of the system. And you become a revolutionary not by picking up a metaphorical rifle, but by literally just opting out of the system and taking your wealth into self-custody. That's it. And if enough of us do it, if enough of the population does that, then that system cannot sustain itself. That's literally what it's about. That is what it's always been about. And Opti, I got to give us credit, bro. We did call it first. I'm going to take credit for that. I think.
Also, I want to add one more thing. We're not really builders, guys. We're just talking heads here. But if you are a builder, the most important thing to be doing is shipping products so that these tools do get into the hands into as many people's hands as possible. That's the most important part about Bitcoin, is having as many people as possible holding and using and saving Bitcoin. So if you're young and you have the itch to build something, you want to learn some skills, that's probably this, if not the first or second most important thing to be doing, is shipping these products so that 8 billion people can eventually use Bitcoin.
100%. All right, everybody. I understand everyone's hesitancy when politics are brought up and politicians are brought up. And the hesitancy you're feeling is because politics is very uncomfortable. It is the organization of power, right? All rules go out the window for a lot of people when it comes to politics. So people tend to shy away with it. But the question that I have for you guys is, look at what's at stake. Do you want your children to live in a future of central bank digital currencies, or do you want your children to live in a future of Bitcoin? The future of capitalism is Bitcoin. The future of communism is central bank digital currencies. And we have an option of which direction we want to head towards. Anyways, everybody, let's get to news. We have lots to cover, specifically regarding the Tornado Cash. We have an update for you guys and its implications on the peaceful revolution. Let's check it out. Here we go.
A special shout out to our sponsor, Compass Mining. They make Bitcoin mining accessible to everyone, from beginners to experienced investors. Their turnkey miners gets you online and hashing within 48 hours, making it easier than ever to start your mining journey. Plus, with their active marketplace, you can resell your miner at any time, adding flexibility and value to your investment. Visit their website to access a wealth of resources, learning everything you need to know about Bitcoin mining. Take your first step into the world of Bitcoin mining with confidence. Discover more at compassmining.io. Again, compassmining.io, and see how Compass Mining can power your success. I want to give a shout out to our sponsor, Foundation. It's self-custody done right. They built a premium grade hardware wallet called Passport right here in the US, and it integrates seamlessly with their free app called Envoy. Passport is fully open source and verifiable. It's the most intuitive Bitcoin wallet design with a UX reminiscent of a classic feature phone, so you'll know how to navigate it and use it the moment you pick it up. It's also air-gapped, meaning Bitcoin stays offline, never touching an internet connection. It's Bitcoin only, open source verifiable, air-gap security model, gorgeous design craft, premium grade materials. Get your Bitcoin off exchanges and into your own hands in just a few minutes with Passport at foundation.xyz/simply. Get peace of mind for your piece of Bitcoin.
Opti is going to model the Passport by Foundation devices for you guys. It's a beautiful hardware wallet. Remember, guys, not your keys, not your cheese. The revolution is self-custody. You're going to want to get yourself a hardware wallet. The reason that we recommend Passport is because it's completely open source. It's completely air-gapped. It's intuitive. It's easy to use. You could pair it up with the Envoy app. This is the perfect gift to get somebody that perhaps isn't comfortable with self-custody, because it makes self-custody incredibly easy. Use promo code SIMPLY to get a discount. It doesn't come with Opti. Maybe just send us a DM
at the right price, potentially 1 Bitcoin.
So I do want to preface this with a little bit saying that before we get to the news of Tornado Cash, this was some major news that happened yesterday. The headline is Swan Bitcoin sues ex-staff over, quote, rain and hellfire plan to steal mining business. Before I jump into this, I led Swan's YouTube channel for a year. I worked at the company, and I have friends that still work at the company. I have friends that don't work at the company. So I'm going to offer no commentary whatsoever. I'm just going to read the article itself. So let's get to it. goes on to say, Bitcoin financial services firm Swan Bitcoin has filed a lawsuit against several former employees from its mining arm, alleging they stole the firm's software code, resigned, and then used that code to kickstart their own mining business. The ex-staff supposedly founded, quote, counterfeit competitor firm Proton Management and convinced one of Swan's funding partners to cut ties with Swan and work with them instead. This was intended to, quote, irreparably harm Swan's ability to compete in the market. The quote is, quote, they hatched a plan to steal Swan's mining business from the inside, usurp Swan's role, and cut Swan out from the joint venture. They dubbed it Rain and Hellfire. Swan CEO Corey Clipson responded 132% year over year. Swan Financial Services revenue is up big. Been an awesome last 12 months of product launches. Mining has always been separate and segregated. Recent news does not affect our core business. All right, moving on to the Tornado Cash case, which has more to do with the revolution that is happening. So the reason that this case was so important is this case resulted in the inevitable arrest of the Samurai developers. The reason that I believe they started with Tornado Cash is because Tornado Cash wasn't a popularly and widely used mixer or a privacy enhancing service. So what happened is they arrested the Tornado Cash developer. They set a precedent for the first time in U.S. history where the U.S. Treasury sanctioned open source software. You see why this is going. You see why Ross Stevens is saying that Bitcoin is protected by the First Amendment. If they can sanction open source software, what is Bitcoin but not open source software, right? They can make the same argument that, hey, you know what? People are using Bitcoin to circumvent U.S. sanctioned policy. They can make that argument, right? This is why these court cases are so important. Now, here are the timeline of events, which we've covered diligently over the last year or so of this happening, by the way. They went after Tornado Cash. They arrested the developer. They set the precedent. Coin Center, which is a Bitcoin and crypto lobbying arm, sued that case. That case got dismissed. A month after that case got dismissed, guess what? They arrested the Samurai developer. And what they're trying to make the claim is that even though the vast majority of people that use Tornado Cash and were using Samurai were just seeking privacy, the 2 or 3% that were using it for illicit purposes, they're responsible. The developers are responsible. Now, I want to show you guys, compare and contrast the difference between how these institutions are treated, right? So these are open source developers that work for our industry. You could say about crypto, you know, we're Bitcoin only, right? We advocate for Bitcoin, but at the end of the day, if you want to buy, you know, Doge, like, so be it. I'm not going to stop you. You can do whatever you want with your money. The crypto and the Bitcoin industry, you know, it is what it is, right? Look at how they're treated. Look at how we're treated. And look at how they're treated. This is a Financial Times article that I referenced a couple days ago. And look at the wording. So Yevgeny Pergresin, he was the guy that was the leader of the Wagner group. The Wagner group was the mercenary group that the Russians used to invade Ukraine. So he was essentially a Russian warlord, which his plane, you know, coincidentally crashed after he had a fallout with Putin. I'll leave it at that, right? And it was an accident, supposedly. But anyways, check out the wording of this article. So this guy, this Russian warlord, secretly used JPMorgan and HSBC for Wagner payments. And it goes on to say, banks unwittingly handled transactions for companies in Africa controlled by deceased Russian warlord. What the fuck is the difference here? What's the difference? What's the difference? Why aren't the CEOs of HSBC and what was the other bank?
JPMorgan.
Jamie Dimon's bank. Why aren't they? What's going on there? Like, why are they not being held responsible? I don't understand. That makes no sense. So they arrest us, but then they get fines? It makes no sense. Well, it does make sense if you start to view it from the way that we view it, which is why Ross Stevens called this a political movement. They see it differently because open source money is a fundamental threat to their monopoly on money. That's what it boils down to. It has nothing to do with laws. Because if laws mattered, why didn't one significant banker go to jail for what happened in 2008? Not one. They got bailed out and they got bonuses, but they didn't go to jail. Rules for thee, but not for me. So anyways, goes on to say, Tornado Cash developer Roman Storm's criminal case will proceed to trial. New York judge orders. The DOJ case against Tornado Cash developer Roman Storm will proceed to trial. A New York judge ruled during a telephonic hearing on Thursday. Quote, at this stage in the case, this court cannot simply accept Mr. Storm's narrative that he is being persecuted merely for writing code. If the jury ultimately accept this narrative, then it will acquit. But there's no basis for me to decide that as a matter of law. I'm going to read this one more time. Banks unwittingly handled transactions for companies in Africa controlled by deceased Russian warlord. I'm going to read the judge's case one more time. At this stage in the case, this court cannot simply accept Mr. Storm's narrative that he is being persecuted merely for writing code. So it's a double standard, isn't it? Anyways, here's some more commentary from fellow Bitcoiners. Bitcoin is now illegal. Joe Carlosari goes on to say, very disappointed ruling in the Tornado Cash case. The court explicitly rejected the First Amendment argument and found as a matter of law that the Bank Secrecy Act doesn't require control. Now do you see why this report was written? This paper, the report, Bitcoin's protection under the First Amendment, argues through extensive legal precedent that Bitcoin is speech and therefore protected by the First Amendment. So what they're doing is they're using this Tornado Cash case to set a precedent on open source developers and open source software so that eventually they can go after Bitcoin. And that's what happened with Samurai. And that's why Ross Stevens wrote the report. And that's where this is heading. That's what this is all about. This is the separation of money and state playing out for you guys in real time, right up in your face. Here's some more commentary. Tornado Cash needed a banking license. Samurai Wallet needed a banking license. WhatsApp, Apple, X probably all needed licenses too. Well, HSBC and JPMorgan had licenses. It didn't really do anything. Doesn't make any sense, correct? That's why the SEC has proposed a rule to formalize licensing requirements for communication protocols. So you need a license to communicate? You see the slippery slope? Like the thing with Bitcoin, guys, that you have to understand is that it exposes incentives. And what you're seeing is you're seeing a government, the nation state, trying to squirm and trying to justify its actions and using any type of law that's in the books, arbitrarily, I might add, to try to retain their power over money. That's what it fundamentally boils down to. I mean, this is something that, the sovereign individual predicted, right? It says the authors predicted that with the rise of this new cyberspace and consequently cyber money, it will become harder for nation states to collect taxes from its citizens. By the way, when I say collect taxes, that there's two types of taxes. There's inflation tax. There's income tax. They compared the state to a farmer keeping cows in a field to be milked, but that, quote, soon the cows will have wings. They predict that for the government to collect taxes from its citizens in this type of society, it would have to violate human rights. Even traditionally civil countries will have to resort and turn nasty. Businesses that offer the services that facilitate the realization of autonomy by individuals will be subject to infiltration, sabotage, and disruption. That's from the sovereign individual. So this has nothing to do with the licenses and the laws. This has everything to do with the fact that, to use BlackRock's words, we now have a non-sovereign monetary alternative. And they're scared to death of that. Fortunately for us here in the United States, we have the First Amendment. And the First Amendment, as Opti referred to earlier on the show, back in the 1990s, they tried to do this before. They tried to make encryption illegal, but they ended up losing those cases because they said someone actually even wore a shirt with the encryption codes that
someone was Adam Back.
That Adam Back, legend, that they were trying to make illegal, right? So, and I have a question for you guys. Like, do you think writing down 12 words and memorizing them is illegal? Do you think like sending like, a transaction, like that's essentially where they're going with this, right? This is tyranny. And the reason it's tyranny is because we've never been in a situation where governments are on the verge of losing a very, very effective and powerful source of funding for them. And that's what it comes down to. Anyways, Lola, and then I'll pass it on to Opti after this. Lola says Tornado Cash needed a banking license. Samurai Wallet needed a banking license. WhatsApp, Apple, X probably all needed licenses too. Doesn't make any sense. Correct. That's why the SEC has proposed a rule to formalize licensing requirements for communication protocols. In a speech at the annual U.S. Treasury Market Conference, Gensler announced to rule on proposed amendments to the Exchange Act by November, which expanded the definition of the term exchange to mean, quote, systems that bring together buyers and sellers of securities. Critics argue the rule may be weaponized to criminally indict software developers in an already hostile environment for crypto and privacy developers. I mean, this is nuts. This is absolutely crazy. Now, last bit of commentary I'll add before we just kind of open up the discussion. There's an election coming up in November, okay? And it will have consequences for the Bitcoin regulatory environment in the United States over the next 4 years. And there's two candidates. One is pro-Bitcoin, anti-CBDC, and one is anti-Bitcoin, pro-CBDC. Who you choose will impact the regulatory environment in the United States. I can't put it any more simpler than that. You can talk to me about all the other political rhetoric. I don't give a flying fuck. I'm a single issue voter. Bitcoin over party. I'm going to say that like 3 times. Bitcoin, party. Bitcoin, party. Bitcoin, party, right? So if we want the environment for Bitcoin owners, Bitcoin business owners, Bitcoin innovators, Bitcoin builders in the United States to be a good environment, maybe the orange man would be a good idea. My 2 cents there. I know it's quite controversial with a lot of people, but yeah, man. I mean, this is a very, very dangerous precedent that we're going down, where government just continues to increase more and more and more and more of their control in the hopes of retaining the power of the money printer. So anyways, my thoughts on all that. Opti, what's your take? And then we'll move on to the next segment.
Yeah, well, my take, not to like reiterate everything you said, it's slightly of a different tangent, but it's still in the same vein. And this ruling basically, or at least so far, it hasn't finished yet. But the judge basically said that control is not necessary to establish money transmission, and this is why we've seen this year in particular, and we've been seeing this build up to this point where they are trying to do whatever they can to stop self-custody of Bitcoin. Remember what was Elizabeth Warren's phrasing, her meme that she made, unhosted wallets. Remember we were talking about unhosted wallets, quote unquote unhosted wallets, for a long time on this show. And like Grubbles said, not Grubbles on Twitter said, now basically Bitcoin is illegal. Like every single person running a node, all the miners, anyone using Bitcoin, if this does set the precedent that we see it going towards, is basically going to mean that all of us are money transmitters because we're using the Bitcoin network. And this is very obviously doubling down on this whole choke point 2.0. Obviously, they've been trying to stop the on and off ramp for a while. They're trying to stop us from taking Bitcoin into our custody. And now, if this does set that precedent, every single person that uses the Bitcoin network is essentially going to need to, sign up to be money transmitters, because none of us can literally no one actually controls the Bitcoins. You just have the keys to send the Bitcoins. And that's like, there's no control of Bitcoin on the network in general. And so again, there's two things going on. One, I think, is them trying to stop you from custodying your Bitcoin. Again, referencing the clip we played yesterday of Gary Gensler, where he's like, look, just go into these regulated custodians, these ETFs, if you want that Bitcoin exposure. Again, a lot of signal to the point that they don't want you custodying your Bitcoin, which, what's that mean? It means we're going to custody our Bitcoin. That's the most important thing to be doing here. And two is, dang, I just blanked on what my second point was on there, but the point still remains. They don't want you to custody your Bitcoin, and they're going to do whatever they can to stop you, the individual, from custodying your Bitcoin. And we're seeing a lot of signs, a lot of writing on the wall that this is the case, that they want to funnel you into these centralized Bitcoin products so that they can control the network. And thus, the most important thing to be doing is taking that Bitcoin into custody. It's not just about getting price exposure to Bitcoin. It's about actually holding that Bitcoin, or rather holding the keys to access that Bitcoin, because now, if this goes through, every single person that participates with Bitcoin is now a money transmitter, which is absolutely ridiculous. It's absolutely ludicrous. It kind of shows, I remember what my second point was. It shows just how, one, tech illiterate these people are, and two, that they're trying to force the fiat rules onto Bitcoin, and it absolutely makes no sense, because Bitcoin is a totally different beast. What's that? I'm thinking of the Kobe tweet commercial where he's like, it's a different beast, but the same monster or something. I forget what it is, but it's a totally different system, and you can see that they're panicking to try to control Bitcoin. From my perspective, I would say that the cat's out of the bag and it's a little too late. But that doesn't mean that they're not going to try to control Bitcoin. It doesn't mean that they're not going to try to gaslight and scare the population away from using Bitcoin, which is why it's so important for us to not only get involved in our community, not only talk about what Bitcoin actually is, and continue to make content, continue to write stuff, continue to build tools so that they can't stop this. Like, it always kind of goes back to the Uber playbook, where look, they're going to write laws. We all know this. They're going to write laws to try to stop Bitcoin, but we just got to make the killer apps out there so that they fundamentally have to bend the knee. But they are actively trying to stop Bitcoin, which just kind of goes into everything we always say. Bitcoin's winning so hard, they're terrified, and all of this is just projection, because they know that the game is up, the jig is up, and the fiat system's the real Ponzi. The fiat system is the real thing that's messing up everything in the world, and they have to protect that moat. They have to do whatever they can to stop Bitcoin and to make us look like criminals. I can't even remember all of the bad things they've called us throughout the years, and they'll continue to do this. It's their incentive to keep the fiat system going, which just completely exposes them when they come to Bitcoin. So, hey, keep taking Bitcoin into custody, keep talking about Bitcoin, keep saving in Bitcoin. This is how we win, is when we literally take all of our wealth and all of our energy out of the fiat system and put it into Bitcoin.
1,000,000%. All right, everybody, stay tuned because we still got the culture segment. Opti hasn't told me what we're going to talk about during the culture.
Well, okay, all right.
You know, a little bit of a tease, my friend.
Yeah. So this week we had a lot of content come out that kind of breaks the echo chamber. And my first story here is, Jack Mahler's talking to Rick Rubin, and I'm a huge hip hop kid, and I just love examples of this. And the next one is, I'll tease the next one, but we have examples of the Bitcoin signal going mainstream, not necessarily mainstream, but just outside of the Bitcoin echo chamber. And this is how we win, is by making more people aware of what is going on, not just from, Bitcoiners that are biased on the internet, but people that have huge platforms, and you can see them getting orange pilled in real time. And it's just beautiful to see.
Absolutely. All right, everybody, stay tuned. We'll be right back. Let's hit the culture. Speaking of culture, guys, stack friends who stack sats. Join the 12,233 Bitcoiners that are currently on the Orange Pull app. The Orange Pull app is the #1 resource for Bitcoin-only events. It is the Bitcoin social layer. If you're on the go, perhaps you've lived in your city for a long time, perhaps you're traveling for Bitcoin conferences and you don't know anyone around you, the Orange Pill app is for you. You pull it up and it will literally show you any Bitcoiners around you, and it will give you the ability to send them a message directly. So you can connect with them. It's probably a good idea to connect with fellow Bitcoiners, right? It's also one of the best ways to send me a message. Don't really answer random Twitter DMs these days or random emails. So if you want to connect with me, you want to talk to me, download the Orange Pill app, scan the QR code, check the link in the video/podcast description, and you can send me a message via the Orange Pill app. Download it today. Also, send a message to Opti. Opti loves talking to people on the Orange Pill app. Anyways, I want to pull this up.
Wait. I literally just opened up the app this morning, and apologies to everyone. I have I don't even know, 50 messages. I'll respond to them. I don't know if I'll get to it all this weekend, but I'm going to respond to everyone. I'm really bad at communicating. The only people I answer the most is literally the only calls I pick up is my mom and Nico. That's the only people I pick up on my phone. I'm really bad at my DMs. Anyways,
ladies and gentlemen, please message Opti on the Orange Pill app. Message Opti on Orange Pill app. Anyways,
sorry guys, I have a lot of messages in there.
Opti, for someone who is not as musically literate as you are, who is Rick Rubin and why is he so important?
Okay, all right, well. Okay, so I've told this story before, but I'll TLDR. Before I got into Bitcoin, I love music. I wanted to produce music. It was my hobby, my passion. I had thousands of records. I just love music. The only thing I probably love more than Bitcoin is, like I said, my mother and music. That's all I care about. So Rick Rubin is probably one of the most famous producers in music, period. He's the GOAT. He's one of the guys that is behind a lot of your favorite music. If you're not a music nerd like I am, then you probably know and love a lot of here. I'll Google this real quick, because there's so many people that Rick Rubin has been a part of that probably just blows your mind. He's behind so much stuff. So he was behind the Beastie Boys, Ghetto Boys, Run DMC, Public Enemy, LL Cool J. He, was behind he's produced records for Johnny Cash, Rage Against the Machine, Metallica, so many people in every corner of the world. Red Hot Chili Peppers. He's behind a lot of modern music. He's a tastemaker, and the beauty of Rick Rubin is that he is very famously he's not even musically inclined. He's just I know what I like. I have a good ear. So in Zoomer terms for you guys, he's an influencer's influencer. Before influencer was a word, he's behind so many artists that you know and love, and he's just a tastemaker. And so this is why I think it's really cool. And again, this is just me kind of scratching my own itch.
That means that he's incredibly talented.
Super talented, but really more, like I said, he's a tastemaker. He's got a great ear. He's a part of popular culture.
That's instinct, my friend.
Exactly. And so when Bitcoiners reach out and we talk to other people, this is how you start to infiltrate popular culture, is by having these conversations with people. Yes, not everyone's Jack Mallers, and yes, everyone you're going to talk to is not Rick Rubin, but you never know how many degrees of separation you are from influential people. And so when I saw this, I thought this was super cool. Picture here of Jack Mallers with Rick Rubin, and they did a podcast. They did an hour podcast, and you got Jack Mallers here going, orange pilling with Rick Rubin. We talk money, time, energy, and why Bitcoin is one of the best tools we've ever created. The harder our money, the better we are. Time and Bitcoin are the only assets where no amount of demand can create more supply. So they dropped this podcast, and then literally the following day, we got Rick Rubin quoting Jack Mallers about just how mind-blowing Bitcoin is. And if you want to hear a masterclass of how to orange pill, I'm not saying Rick Rubin's necessarily a normie, but he's a normie in regards to Bitcoin. But if you want to hear a masterclass of how to orange pill a normie and teach them about Bitcoin, I highly recommend you go listen to this podcast. Rick Rubin's, I'm gonna butcher the name of the podcast. It's like Magatron or something. Just Google Rick Rubin, Jack Mallers. But this quote right here from Mike Germano. Of course, he's over at Bitcoin Magazine. He goes, Bitcoin needs less Bitcoiners talking on Bitcoin podcast about Bitcoin. We need more of this, of reaching out and talking to other people outside of our space that are tastemakers, that do understand that there is a revolutionary shift going on. And the funniest part about this clip is you can, in real time, hear Rick Rubin kind of get orange pilled and the aha moments go on. So it's beautiful. All right, next one is we got this clip.
Wait, can you go back and read that quote?
The whole quote? Okay. So here's Rick Rubin quoting Jack Mallers, and he goes, change is hard and scary. It's difficult to adopt something you don't understand. But what's funny is you can look at it two ways. You can say, wow, this is such an obvious technological advancement for our species. Why wasn't this adopted yesterday? Or you could say Bitcoin was invented 15 years ago by an anonymous individual with no marketing budget, no corporate headlines. This person didn't take it public with Goldman Sachs, and it's already a $1 trillion asset class that's materially changing the world. How long did it take Google to make its impact? Longer than 15 years. You can look at it two ways. You can go, holy smokes, this is going really fast, or you can maybe glass half empty this. Jack Mallers, quoted by Rick Rubin, who is an absolute goat when it comes to shifting the cultural landscape that we all find ourselves a part of. So love him or hate him, he's a tastemaker. And if he's getting orange pilled, he's having these conversations with people. And once you get orange pilled, you don't go back. Okay, on the same thing, another person, love him or hate him, we got this. I think this is an awesome clip, and I'm going to connect this with the hurricane that is hitting in Tampa right now in Florida, near Nico's neck of the woods. But we got Andrew Tate on his podcast talking about what we say here on the show all the time. So I want to play this real quick because it's actually kind of hilarious.
We have Bitcoin now. Why would you buy a house when you can buy Bitcoin instead? You buy a house, you have to pay property tax. You buy a Bitcoin, done. Unless you sell it. You haven't got to pay property taxes every month. The government can't take it from you because you lost it in a boating accident. Plus, you get a higher rate of return. Plus, you're geographically free. Plus, you can liquidate it instantly without waiting years to sell it on the market.
Just love it. Absolutely love it. Just spitting bars out there. And now connecting this to the hurricane that we're seeing, we've seen that Gary Cardone, brother of Grant Cardone, their financial investors, and they got a big platform. They're mainly in real estate, but he dropped this clip yesterday and connecting the two, what Andrew Tate just said with Gary Cardone literally having the hurricane land on his front yard. He's sitting here saying the same thing, like, damn, I should have just bought Bitcoin instead of this house. So remember what Tate just said, and then listen to this. There is some wind background because he's literally in the heart of a hurricane, but I found this hilarious too.
I mean, it's almost above the rail now. It's a foot and a half from the rail. I'll lose all my electrics here in a little bit. Well, where to live it? I'll tell you one thing. This is $72 million worth of Bitcoin right here. If I would have bought Bitcoin with the same amount of money I spent to buy this house in October of 2020, this house would be worth $72 million, and I wouldn't be worried about the water.
All right, so if you couldn't hear that because of all the hurricane winds, he said this house right here is worth $72 million in Bitcoin. And if he had bought Bitcoin in 2020 when he bought this house, today it would be worth $72 million. And he wouldn't have to worry about the hurricane literally on his front yard. And he's been going on a tirade on Twitter ever since. Big if. Yeah, and then
he stamped his seed on a stamped seed titanium.
Wait, Nico. Exactly. And the last one is this one, which is just absolutely hilarious. You can see that Bitcoin is thoroughly saturating the culture, and I just love this. So Haley Welch, aka the famous Hot Tua girl, she dropped a meme this morning with Michael Saylor. There's been a new Twitter trend of her podcast where they put her with famous figures. And did you hear what was said on her podcast? But she tweeted this one this morning, which is hilarious. Good morning, Mr. Sailor Moon. And you can see up here on top, Haley recently went viral for telling Michael Saylor the future of Bitcoin will be immutable data storage that is decentralized from any government control on the Talk to a podcast. And just a meme. I know it's Friday and we're probably not going to do the meme review today, but I just find it hilarious that we're seeing Bitcoin slowly but surely just start to saturate popular culture, whether it's talking to Rick Rubin, whether it's Andrew Tate talking about it on his podcast, Grant Cardone, Gary Cardone's talking about it, or even Dave Ramsey being so anti-Bitcoin. Like all these people are talking about Bitcoin, or the Hawk Tua girl posting Bitcoin memes. I think as the price starts to go up, we're going to see more examples of this coming out. And I think there will be a watershed moment where it's probably going to be after 100K, that once Bitcoin price does start to run, there's going to be a retail fervor and retail FOMO like we saw in 2017. Yes, everyone's broke out there, but that just means everyone is looking for a way to increase their purchasing power. So, just a fun little Friday about the culture and about Bitcoin saturating popular culture. Usually we talk about different cultural events. Today, of course, I kind of weave together the hurricane and maybe why you don't want to buy real estate. I'm a huge fan of Rick Rubin. I think he's the GOAT. And so you can see Bitcoin is starting to make inroads into popular culture, and it's only a matter of time until the rest of the world realizes the revolutionary power and the movement behind Bitcoin. So, just a light little culture for you today, Nico. But what's your thoughts?
Excellent, dude. That was excellent. I love that. This is why, if you guys are simply Bitcoin OGs, like we used to have a different segment, right? And we transitioned to the culture because we felt like, this is a revolution. And I love Andrew Breitbart's quote when it comes to this, right? Like you want to win over the politics, you have to win over the culture. Like politics is downstream from culture. That's why it's so important. That's why we highlight these types of things. And Germano, first of all, he's the president of Bitcoin Magazine. Look up to him. He has a tremendous amount of
was at Vice.
I was about to say that. Tremendous amount of experience in media. So for him to say that statement holds a lot of weight. And that is how you move the Overton window. That's how you move the cultural window, right? When you have people that did not get famous in Bitcoin talking about how Bitcoin fixes things. Because then people won't automatically think you're a lunatic from the beginning, right? Like Opti and I built my fame, and we built our platform through Bitcoin, right? So when I'm approaching people, they know me as a Bitcoiner. If this guy Cardone or Orange Man or Russell Brand or Tim Pool talk about Bitcoin and how Bitcoin fixes things, they never built their fame on Bitcoin. They built their fame on a variety of different things. And then they're talking about Bitcoin. They're saying Bitcoin fixes things. So that is how we break this Bitcoin echo chamber, and we really get this idea. And I want you guys, if you guys have made it to the end of the show, to connect everything that we've been saying from the very beginning to now. And I want you guys to connect the dots, right? So all these mainstream people basically saying Bitcoin fixes this. Look at what the government is doing to try to stop it. And then the question that I want to leave for you guys over the weekend is not what is money, what is government? And why should the government, especially in the United States, this is supposed to be a free country. You're free, your speech is protected, your right to bear arms is protected. Your right to an opinion, right to privacy, all of those things are protected. They aren't privileges given to you by government. They're things that were bestowed to you by God. And that's the way it's framed. So now that we are in this stage in history where we are in the separation of money and state, and it's exposing the incentives of these institutions and the state, which is supposed to be by the people for the people. But Bitcoin, what it's really doing is it's exposing it to be by the state for the state. It's important to remember where we are. And it's important to remember that each and every single one of us can make a difference. We don't need a platform. So every time you see Gary Gensler or the Treasury or a central bank account or something on Twitter or the New York Times or all the legacy media, go in there and try to just, shout BS from the rooftops. Get in there and make your voice heard. I love this quote by Jeff Booth. I'm gonna end it with this, which is, if the international rules-based order is built on a system of theft, what do you think that rules-based order is going to require? Coercion and censorship. Simple as that. So anyways, guys.
Wait, last thing I want to say, last little bit, and then we're rolling it out. Bitcoin is fighting a cultural war just as much as it's fighting a monetary war. And as we know, once you start holding Bitcoin, you start to see the world differently. Once you get on the Bitcoin operating system, you fundamentally view the world differently. And a lot of this does have to do with our behaviors as a whole on planet Earth right now, and being incentivized by the fiat system. And Bitcoin is fundamentally changing that, block by block, person by person. The world is changing in real time once they all start touching Bitcoin and getting involved in Bitcoin. So this is how we win. It is a cultural movement as much as it is a monetary one, as much as it's going to be a political one. This is a movement about people, and this is how we win.
100%. One individual at a time, winning over the hearts and minds of people, meeting them where they are. This is not left versus right. It's not liberal versus conservative. It is the party of green, the party of fiat versus the party of Bitcoin, the party of freedom and hope and opportunity and peace and prosperity. Anyways, guys, this was Simply Bitcoin Live for the week of September 27th, 2024. This is the Friday episode. I'm your host, Nico. This is my legendary co-host, Optimus Fields. Hope you guys have an amazing weekend. Smash the like button. Consider subscribing if you feel like we provided you value. We're Simply Bitcoin Live. Go outside, touch some grass, get some sun, eat some steak, enjoy your family. Family's the most important. Love you all. We'll see you back on Monday for a brand new episode. Stay tuned for Dante Cook dropping Bitcoin Simply episodes today and tomorrow, and a clip on Sunday. The live show will be back on Monday. Love you guys. Take care. Peace out, everybody.
Was brought to you by BitcoinWell.com, a Bitcoin-only platform on a mission to enable financial independence.